Hello guys, and welcome back to Joe's Ventures, and today we're going to be doing another episode of our Planet Zoo mod spotlights, where we take a look at some of the wonderful mods people are making and use them to talk about some of the wonderful biodiversity that we share our world with. So today, I'm filming this on Christmas Day, by the way, so Merry Christmas to everyone. I'll probably obviously release it afterwards, but it's all good. So, today we're going to go over, we've got a few fish species you can see here, we've got a bird and then a few mammals, including a really cool extinct mammal, which I'm quite excited to get stuck into. So we're going to be starting off strong with the African fish pack, or like some of the animals from that has been made by Jay Aquatics, who's kind of decided we're going to release lots of fish at the moment. So we're going to have a look at the first fish by Jay Aquatics here, and it's the Maboo pufferfish, also known as the giant freshwater pufferfish, or just the giant puffer, or Mabuna puffer. So these guys are giant carnivorous freshwater pufferfish that originates from the middle to lower sections of the Congo River in Africa, and can be found on the east coast of Lake Tanganyika and the Malagares River mouth. So that's quite cool. So this species is often called the giant freshwater catfish, as you could guess, because it's enormous. So these guys grow to a length of about 67 centimeters, or about 26 inches. And because they are this sizes, they do require, if you ever have them in aquaria, such as in, either in a commercial aquarium, or, like an actual aquarium, or just a tank in your house. They're very, very large fish, which means they require very, very large tanks with lots of good filtration as well, so they can able to handle the volume of water. So the Maboo puffers are distinct from other members of their genus. The genus itself is Tetradon itself and Mui, but it also has, what's interesting as well, this labyrinthine pattern on its skin pigmentation, and it actually is in contrast to the more mottled or striped patterns seen in the Whakaha pufferfish, which is quite cool. And these patterns become more pronounced as they become adult fish. And like all of its relatives, they're actually capable of inflating itself with water or air when stressed or otherwise frightened. So very similar to most other species pufferfish, be that the porcupine pufferfish from the sea, or the species from the rivers. We do have a lot more pufferfish than I think people realise. So yeah, definitely they use that ability to protect themselves from predators. So in terms of their diet, these guys feed on small fish, mollusks, crustaceans, worms, and crayfish. And species kept in captivity required a varied diet consisting of shell foods, because their teeth are constantly growing, and you see they actually have 4 teeth that kind of combine to make like a pseudo beak. So to keep that beak healthy, they need to be given hard-shelled foods that allow them to wear down those teeth, as it's quite important for all pufferfish in terms of their care and captivity. So that's quite cool there. See if we can have a look at any other facts. See if we find anything else. Large species pufferfish. Yeah, we kind of mentioned that before. They're able to change their colours based on mood, which makes it far easier to tell how they're feeling compared to other fish. And importantly, they have a distinct barred pattern that they take on when stressed, which can be seen as an obvious sign is that there's an issue and they are stressed. So it's really cool that they actually show you that they're stressed. Adults have almost no natural predator to their size and toxicity, as they are pretty much all pufferfish are toxic. And small-clawed otters are the only species that have been recorded taking adults of the species so far. Juveniles are far more vulnerable, though. This is due to their smaller size and the fact that most pufferfish aren't born with the toxins, but accumulate them as they grow. Maboo pufferfish can be trained to recognize when and how they will be fed, and are capable of forming strong positive associations with their keepers. Despite their their size and their powerful beak-like, they can take food directly from tongs quickly, quite calmly and gently. So that's quite cool as well. See another really cool species. So yeah, that's the Maboo catfish. Not catfish. The pufferfish, but now we've got a catfish. We've got here quite a shocking fish, I could say. We've got the electric catfish. So I'm pretty sure this is the right species, but I'm going to assume it's the right one. It's Maboo electris, which matches the description from... this one is called species base in the game. I don't think they properly put the Zoopedia, but I'm going to assume this is the right species, since there's quite a few different electric catfish, but this is the typical electric catfish that I think that they're meaning here. So this is called Maboo electricus. So they're a thick-set fish with 6 mouth bardules and a single fin on the back, just anterior, just in front of the big tail fin, rounded tail fin. You can see they're brownish and grey. They have kind of these mottled spottings along them, and they attain a length and weight of about 1.2 meters, or about 4 feet long, and can weigh up to 23 kilograms, or 51 pounds. So that's quite interesting. And, as they live the name, the electric catfish, they're actually capable of generating and controlling the discharge of up to 450 volts of energy, electricity. And they use this power to both defend itself, but also capture prey. So its name itself is Ancient Greek, which means soft wing. So soft wing tail, and the epithet electris, it just means electric. So it's the soft winged electric tail, kind of the best way to put it. And in terms of its distribution, this is another African species. These guys occur in the Nile in tropical Africa, as well as the Nasarawa state in Nigeria, in Lafar, and exclusive of Lake Victoria, but Lake Turkana, Lake Chad, and the Senegal Basin. In terms of biology, these guys often occur among rocks favouring standing water. They are active at night, feeding mainly on fish stunned by electric shocks. The electrical organ itself can discharge about 300 to 400 volts, and is derived from the pectoral muscle and actually surrounds the entire body. And it uses it to both capture prey and defend itself. So this is an old world catfish, and it's reputed that actually they use the shocks in ancient Egypt. They used the shocks of these catfish to to reduce the pain of arthritis, and this is actually still used today in some areas. And this has been an earliest reference because they found them in hieroglyphs in the ancient tubes of ancient Egyptians from like 5,000 years ago. So that's quite interesting. They're also eaten as parts of a lot of foods of Africa, being a food fish. It's also encountered in the trade as aquarium fish. And their electric organs have been studied using for metabolization and transport of signals through the neurons and stuff. So they're quite an important fish that a lot of scientists like to study. In terms of reproduction, in their natural habitat, they actually form pairs and will lay their eggs in excavated cavities or holes. And the male takes the eggs into his mouth. And there are rumors that they are mouth brooders, but it's unknown how the fry is immune to the electric shocks by the parents. So we don't know how that works. But in the aquariums, so you can have them as aquarium fish. They're sometimes encountered in aquarium supply stores. They can be reached a maximum length, as mentioned, about 1 meter, but average size about 12 inches. They are quite hardy and generally accept most foods, although some experimentation may be required to find the best food. The only other animal that's compatible with this species is snails, which I ignore. They need a minimum size of 55 US gallons, or about 210 litres as aquarium size, with bogwood and all pieces of PVC. They're active burrowers and often remove the gravel from under their favourite hiding spot. Their minimum temperature is about 24 degrees. And it's actually illegal to possess any species of these species for personal or commercial use in Florida, probably to prevent them from becoming invasive. Be another really cool species. Another great one by J. Quadix, another winner. So last but certainly not least, out of J. Quadix, we have got the African Arowana. So let's have a look here. So you're probably familiar with the Asian Arowana, which I've covered before, the dragonfish. But here we've got the African Arowana. So this one is also known as the Nile Arowana. They are Hectorus lithicalis. So these guys are a species of bony tongue. And despite being called an arowana, they're actually more closely related to arapimas than the South American, Asian, or Australian arowanas. This is a great example of conversion to evolution, which is interesting as well. Compared to those, they have much more of a terminal mouth, and they're actually the only one that feeds on plankton exclusively. So that's quite interesting. So the African arowana is a long-bodied fish with large scales, the top dorsal and long dorsal and anal fin set far in the body, and a rounded caudal fin. They have a height that's 2 to 3.5 times standard length, so they can have been reported to get up to about 1 meter and weigh up to about 10 kilograms or 22 pounds. So this fish, as you can see, grey, brown, or bronze in colour, and the colour being quite uniform in adults, but the young will have dark longitudinal bands. One cool thing as well, these guys can breathe, so they can air breathe. Have air-breathing organs, allow them to survive in oxygen-depleted water, and a suprabrachial organ allows it to concentrate small plankton and food particles, and also has a sensory function, so they are quite well adapted for what they do. So this species itself is actually widespread across Africa, where it is native to all the watersheds in the Sahelo-Sudanese region, Senegal, as well as parts of eastern Africa. This range includes the basin of the Korobol, Voltalia, Niger, and Nile rivers, as well as Lake Turkana, and they have been introduced to places like the Cross River in Nigeria, and the Nyong rivers in Cameroon, and the Arowana bridges in Gabon. They've also been introduced to Madagascar, but these introductions suggest that they may have been negative to the ecosystem. And they're also locally used as a food fish source and have been caught in the past for aquarium trade. They're not aggressive like their relatives, and it actually is aquacultured in its range, quite very successful due to its tolerance of crowding and easy feeding. So they are a fish that's actually quite good at being farmed, which is very cool. If you have a look at other information we've got. Compared to the silver, red, and black arowanas, they're relatively peaceful. They have smaller down-tooth mouths that use them to catch invertebrates. We mentioned that before. We mentioned that as well. African arowana switch their main food sources mature, with young juveniles being active hunters, seeking out platonic invertebrates through the water column, while other older adult fish tend to scavenge for detritus at the bottom of the lake or rivers which they've assigned. Fish that live in lakes typically begin eating detritus earlier in life than river-dwelling individuals. African arowana spend the early stage of their life as filter feeders. Prior to recent studies, it was theorized that filter feeding throughout their lives, due to their bodies being less adapted for a predatory lifestyle. And we already mentioned that they're actually more closely related to arapaimas from South America rather than true arowanas. So that's quite interesting as well. So yeah, cool facts there. So all of these were done by J Aquatics. Love to see more fish from them. So, and what's cool is all these species are least concerned. So these are all species that are doing quite well in their ecosystems. So I know a lot of people like to hear about that. So next up, we've got Lorby, who's given us a bird this time. How can you not love a nice bird? Next up here, we have got the common scooter, which is Malatina niger. So this is a large sea duck. They reach about 43 to 54 centimeters, or about 17 to 21 inches in length. And they breed over the far north of Europe and the Palearctic. And the back scooter which is known in North America and eastern Siberia. So it was formerly considered to be a subspecies, but now it's its own species. So the common scooter itself was formally described by Carl Linnaeus in 1758 in the 10th edition of Systematia Naturae under the binomial name Anas niger, which is the genus that includes like mallards and stuff. But then they were originally given their own genus in 1822 of Melanicta by zoologist Frederick Bonnier, which means basically black duck. And as I mentioned, they were considered to be the same thing as the black scooter, but now they've been split into different species, with this being kind of the Eurasian version and the black scooter being the American version. So in terms of description, you can see they're characterized by their quite bulky shape and large bill. This is a female, so she's kind of a little bit more drab. The female's a brown bird with pale cheeks, and very similar to the female black scooters. But we'll have a look at the male. They're a little bit more impressive. So these males here, you can see they're all black with a bulbous bill, and they do sometimes have this yellow coloration around the nostrils. And the species can be distinguished by other scooters by their lack of white anywhere on the drake, and the more extensive white on the females. And they are also, ways to tell them apart is their different vocalizations. So they are quite similar species, but they do have some differences between them, which is quite cool. So in terms of their ecology and behavior, it winters farther south in temperate zones on the coast of Europe, as far south as Morocco, and they form large flocks in suitable coastal waters, and they're tightly packed, and the birds tend to take off and dive together. The lined nest is built on the ground to the sea, lakes and rivers, in woodland or tundra, and they lay them kind of like the lined nest, and they have about 6 to 8 eggs typically laid. The species dives for crustaceans and mollusks, while they also eat other aquatic insects and small fish when in freshwater. So they do have quite a bit of a similar diet to other scooters, and quite an interesting food source there. The common scooter, though, is actually also one of the species that is under the agreement of the conservation of African Eurasian migratory water birds. So they are protected under those laws. And there have been some issues with population. I believe they are considered least concern, but there are some local areas where they are endangered, such as the UK. So in 1997, Bruce Campbell, an ornithologist, estimated the wintering population of Western Europe to be about 130,000, and the UK population about 20,000. And in 2003, a previously unknown population of 50,000 was found while surveying for a new wind farm. And during this development and an oil spill off the coast of Wales in 1996, there was questions about the population in the UK Parliament. Although the common scooter is a winter visitor to the UK, there are some breeding pairs in the north of Scotland. The species has been placed in the RSPB Conservation Red List because there's been a greater than 50% decline in the UK breeding population. In 1998, there was a biodiversity action plan for the common scooter to implement their breeding populations to 100 pairs in 2008. And the Northern Irish population, which reached its peak of about 200 pairs in the 1970s, crashed tragically in the 1990s, and then in 2010 there was no confirmed breeding, so that population went extinct. However, 100 pairs were recorded in the south of Ireland in a 1995 survey, and the UK breeding pairs declined to 35 as is 2015, and attempts to be made to research why exactly this happened. And as the third steering group meetings as well, they propose that these flat areas there may be about 6,500 wintering birds and 5,000 molting birds, which makes 4,000 to use the footprint area of the wind farm. So scooters and meatless Fridays in France. So here's a little bit about culture stuff about these guys. In parts of France in the 19th century, the common scooter was accepted by the Roman Catholic Church as a substitute for fish during a Friday fast. So these kind of were used as alternates to that. So yeah, that's quite funny, I think. Really, really cool animals. But yeah, they're not too different. I've covered black scooters. We've covered pretty much all the species, I think, at the moment. I've covered the American scooter, the common scooter, and I definitely remember the surf scooter. So I'm really wondering what they're going to do in the future. We've covered a lot of species before. So it's really cool that we get the complete kind of the genus of Melanecta complete and done by Lorby. So yeah, really, really cool. Definitely a big fan of that. So next up, we've got Sky Polaris, with only one mod today, but it is a good one. We've got the Burchell's zebra. So let's have a look there. So the Burchell zebra, or Equus quagga burchellis, is a southern subspecies of the plain zebra, and was named after the naturalist and British explorer William John Burchell. And common names also call it the Bonita quagga, Dharma land zebra, or the Zulu land zebra. And they're the only subspecies of that zebra that may be legally farmed for human consumption. So they're the only ones that can be farmed, which is very interesting to talk about. So in terms of physical characteristics, they're not too different than most plain zebras. The females and males are about the same size, standing between 1.1 to 1.4 meters, or 3 feet 7 to 4 foot 7 at the shoulder, and they weigh between 230 and 320 kilograms, or between 500 and 700 pounds. Year-round observations of reproduction in these subspecies of Estonia suggest that they conclusively synchronize the time budget between males and females, and so they spend pretty much the same energy making babies, so they pretty much don't have any levels of sexual dimorphism. Burchell zebras are described as being striped on the heads, necks, and flanks, and sparsely down the upper segments of the limbs fading to white. One or two stripes rest between the bold black stripes on the haunch, as you can kind of see there, and it's one of the main distinguishing features. That's the main distinguishing feature that separates the Burchell zebras from the other subspecies of zebra. And they also observed a distinct dorsal line on the tail that only bristly at the end and is distinctly white. And the dorsal line is also narrow and gets gradually bolder as it kind of goes down the body, with distinct margins of white on each side, as you can kind of see going on here. So yeah, they did a great job, replicating that for us. So behavior, like most plain zebras, they live in small family groups. This can either be a harem or a bachelor group, with harem groups containing one stallion and about 1 to 6 mares and their most recent foals, while bachelor groups contain 2 to 8 unattached stallions. So the males in bachelor herds are often on the younger or older stallions of the population, as they're most likely not experienced or strong enough to defend breeding rights as a group of females from challengers. The small groups often congregate into larger herds around water sources, but still maintain their identity as family units whilst the population's gathering as well. So in terms of their range, formerly the Burchell zebra was centered north of the Orange River system, extending into what was southern Botswana and Estonia, and the Katzaveld, and southeast to Eshwari and the KwaZulu Natal. They're now extirpated from the northern section, so basically they live on the northern west and southern eastern parts of their population, so they're 2 isolated populations now, which is a little bit sad. We'll actually move on and have a look at something like the cute little babies here, where we talk a little bit about their genetics and things. We have 3 babies. Oh no, we don't have 3 babies. I was thinking, like, they're really pumping out babies then today. So we've got this really cool one here, and you can see mum and baby, I think. So there are some controversies about introductions. So I believe I might have mentioned this with the probably the other species, the Grant zebra, the subspecies. So in 2001 up till about 2016, the Kasami Foundation reintroduced wildlife into the Quinsanam National Park in Angola, and this was called Operation Noah's Ark, where they released animals like wildebeest, blue wildebeest, waterbuck, Cape giraffe, bush elephants, gemsbok, nyala, and ostrich, and also Burchell zebra. And from about 2017 and until 2019, they also exported wildlife to the Democratic Republic of the Congo and introduced animals in that area there. So these are populations that have established of Burchell zebras. And both introductions are controversial because the park services bodies of both countries did not opt to obtain the native Grant zebra, so the Grant subspecies, which I covered a little while ago, also made by Sky Polaris. That was the native species there, and this has come to replacement. This was the replacement for these guys. So they haven't really covered that as well. That scared me a bit. I thought my screen would have gone off, but no, that we're fine. Anyway, there is believed to be an extinct subpopulation. Like other plain zebras, they must have populated Africa in oppressive numbers, and associations of thousands have been reported, but those wild herds have thought to have been disappeared in 1910. And the last known of captive individual died in Berlin Zoo in 1918. As European settlement spread northward from the Cape in colonial southern Rhodesia, this subspecies was actually thought to have been hunted to extinction. However, Groves and Bell conducted in their 2004 publication, The Extinct True Burchell Zebra is a Phantom. So careful study of the original zebra populations of Zululand and Eswatini, and skins harvested from game farms around that area have revealed a certain small portion shows similarities now what is regarded as typical Burchelli. And the type localities of the two subspecies of Equus quagga burchelli and Equus quagga antiquum, which is the Darmaland zebra, were so close to each other, and they suggested they were one of the same, and therefore the older name Burchells took over the younger name. So that's kind of where those names come from. And younger, we mean in terms of the name, not the animal. So therefore, it stands to it's correct that the southernmost subspecies must be Burchelli and not Antiquum, and the subspecies Equus quagga burchelli still exists in Estonia as well, so that means they are not extinct anymore. And Burchelli is found in a number of zoos in the United States, and includes Cincinnati, Columbus, Naples, Nashville, and Woodland Park Zoo. So they are quite common around the place. And we're going to have a look at the cute little babies, because I love these cute little babies. I am a big fan. Alright, next up, we're going to be carrying on to our second to last animal. So it's done by Sky Polaris. And the next two are done by our lovely Great Cakes, who does an awesome job, as always. So look at this cute little guy. So this is Darwin's fox. So let's have a look at Darwin's fox. So Darwin's fox, or Darwin Zorro, Lycopelix fulvipens, is an endangered canine from the genus Lycoplex. It's also known as the Zorro chitoli, or Zorro de Darwin. And in Spanish, it lives in the Nicobarito National Park, the Corella de Oncol, Corella Pedla, and mainland Chile, and the Chiloni Island. So a very, very cool little guy. So this small dark canine, as you can see, weighs about 1.8 to 3.95 kilograms, or about 4 to 8 pounds, and has a head to body length of about 48 to 59 centimeters, or 19 to 23 inches, and a tail that's about 17 to 25 centimeters, or 7 to 10 inches. So Darwin's fox, as you can see, they don't really have many differences between males and females. So if I switch over to another one here, we're not going to see much differences between them. Other than the fact that the males may have a broader muzzle, so slightly just wider face, which is not a huge difference. And males display no territorial behavior that is not aggressive towards other males roaming their territory. Darwin's fox, first collected from Santa Pedro Island off the coast by Charles Darwin, and hence he named it Darwin's fox. It was long held that the Darwin's fox was actually considered a subspecies of the South American grey fox. However, there was discovery of a small population of Darwin's fox on the mainland of Nahabuta National Park, and there were subsequent genetic analyses that looked into it and actually found that these guys were definitely their own species rather than just a subspecies. And in 2012 and 2013, their presence was confirmed through camera trapping in places like Oncol Park and Valuvian Coastal Reserve. So that's quite interesting as well. So Lycoplex itself is a South American genus of canid, which is actually more closely related to wolves than are to true foxes. So they're technically not a fox. They're just called foxes because they're a bit more small and fox-like, so they're not true foxes. When Charles Darwin collected the specimen from Santa Pedro Island in December 1834, during the Beagle Survey expedition, he observed that this fox sat on the point and was so absorbed by watching him that it allowed me to walk behind him and actually kill him with my geological hammer. So that's a little bit sad. But in 1839, publications said the fox was more curious or more scientific, but less wise than the generality of his brethren. And this specimen is actually now mounted in the Museum of the Zoological Society. And he said it was an undescribed species, as it was distinct from them that occurred on the mainland, and it was considered a subspecies of the South American, as I mentioned, the South American grey fox. And then described its own species. Now, they do not interbreed with other members of the genus, and they only live in forests and are smaller and darker coloured than other species. And in 1990, as I mentioned, a small population was found on the mainland, indicating that this forest was not; these guys weren't endemic to those islands. And according to Yahani et al. In their 1996 thing, they published the grey fox and the Darwin's fox DNA show two patterns, which suggests that they actually are a new species, closely related to the Sherrichan fox. And according to Yankee in 1905 and 6, this present restricted range is a relic of a much wider formal range. And they also noted the distinctiveness of this fox's ecological niche compared to other foxes or other local canids, which is quite interesting as well. As Darwin's fox differed from the grey fox, or the South American grey fox, as being darker, having shorter legs, a broader, shorter skull, smaller auditory bulb, more robust dentition, and different jaw shape. So there was a lot of differences between them, which is interesting as well. And they believed to have gotten to Cholte Island due to late Pleistocene. Why are they all sleeping on me? That's a little bit rough. They just all sleep on me. So they would have got to the island itself by walking, as it would have been connected to the mainland up until about 15,000 years ago, where it was where the sea levels rose and isolated them and isolated the populations. So in terms of their diet, these guys are quite interesting animals. They have a vast diet in dense forests where they're typically found. The foxes hunt for mammals, seeds, berries, reptiles, beetles, invertebrates, and seeds as though. And they will lesserly eat kind of birds and amphibians, and they will sometimes eat carrion, but they are considered omnivores, so pretty much eat anything they can get their mouths around, which is quite cool. And while we talk about the ecology, we're going to have a look at the two little babies, because they're very, very cute. Sorry. So the Darwin's fox is generally believed to be a southern or a forest obligate species found only in the southern temperate rainforests across the southern coasts of South America. They only occur in primary forests of Chile and on the mainland. They are most active in twilight and before sunrise. In contrast to other Lycoplex species, they actually prefer open spaces. The population itself on Chihole is about 200 individuals, and Nahabuta is about 50 individuals, with a total population of about 250 mature individuals, with at least 90% of the population occurring in the one subpopulation. And although this species is protected, substantial mortality sources exist when foxes move to lower, unprotected private areas in search of milder conditions in the winter. And this population is considered to be critically endangered because the main population occurs on one island and their habitat was declining due to human impacts. So these guys are actually the first species that we've been talking about today. So these guys were actually previously considered up to about 2016 as critically endangered, but they had been uplisted to endangered. So that's quite a good thing to hear. It's always, even though it's going from worse to less worse, it's still an upgrade. But it's still not good. It's an upgrade though, so we always love it. So it's downlisted to endangered by the IUCN in 2016, as the area occurrences was apparently substantially larger than originally believed. Current population estimates are still low, with an estimated minimum population of 227 individuals on the mainland and then 412 on Chihole Island, so less than 1,000 individuals. Fragmentation of forests adjacent to national parks and on the island is very much a concern of their conservation, and feral dogs may pose their greatest threat as to their survival by spreading disease or potentially directly attacking them because they are smaller than domestic dogs. So that's definitely a big problem. Persecution by people who think that the foxes attack domestic fowls, that they pose a threat, is also a potential problem. So people think, oh, they're going to steal our food, but they don't. So the species, we'll talk about what diseases these guys kind of get impacted by. So the species is often plagued by Mycoplasma haemocanus. So this already endangered fox species is prone to this infection because the infection's bacteria attach themselves to the surface red blood cells in many mammals. And although the species is believed to be no major threat to humans, it can spread disease to humans, dogs, cats, and other wildlife species. The bacteria also seems to spike when located close to any major habitat included by humans, where there's a large population of wild dogs present near the species. So researchers are testing RNA samples, and out of 10 foxes, 9 were infected. So they definitely do carry these things. And even though they are considered sick, they have no external symptoms. And studies show that many fox risk the carrying of the deadly bacteria inclines of their age, and they're moving many older foxes. So as they kind of age, they become more susceptible to it and then kind of die. And although this disease is prevalent in the species, little or nothing is known about this disease. So it's very interesting there about this disease and stuff like that. But yeah, really, really cool. Another great cakes mod. I would consider that an absolute winner. So to finish off today, we've got an extinct animal. We've got a Brontothea, one I've been actually wanted to cover for a while, so I'm quite excited to talk about this animal. So we've got here Embolotherium and Andrewsi, or Andrewsi. So have a look at this beautiful guy here. See, look at the male, because the male's always the most impressive. So look at this beautiful guy. So Embolotherium, which means a battling ram beast or wedge beast. These guys are an extinct genus of Brontothea, or a big rhino-like. They're not related to rhinos that closely, but rhino-like animals that lived in Mongolia during the late Eocene. So about 40 to 34 million years ago. So quite a long time ago. Sadly, you can't really see it right now. Well, actually, I'm actually going to fast forward a little bit so you guys actually get a good look at their face. As they carry on eating, but I think that's about it. Let's carry on. So you can see they actually get their name from this, and how they're easily recognized by this large protuberance on their face, which is coming from almost like a rhino's horn, but as I'm going to explain, it's nothing like a rhino horn. This resembles a battering ram, hence they get the name Embolotherium from that. This animal is known from 12 skulls, several jaws, and a variety of other elements from the Ulanguch Formation in Mongolia, as well as the Embolotherium Formation in Outer Mongolia. So we know they lived in Mongolia. So there were several species of Embolotherium kind of originally described, but they had been dwindled down over time to 2 valid species, as a lot of them were synonymized because they were either bad skulls or based on the skulls of juveniles, which obviously grow into adults. So looking at the skulls, they can easily tell, oh, this is actually a baby. So obviously their horns would look different because they are not fully grown. So they were all lumped into 2 different species, either E. andrewsi, which is this species, and Gangarai. So that's kind of the 2 differences there. The one, as I mentioned, Andrewsi. The main way to tell them apart is they have very different kind of nasal horns, as I'll kind of explain. There was another genus of Brontothea, Titanodectus, which was named from several lower jaws found in the same area, and that probably represents the same beast as Grandry species. And there's a Proto-Embolotherium, but that is distinguished by having a much more smaller kind of battering ram on its face, which is quite interesting as well. So in terms of its description, so the skull reaches a length of about 920 millimeters, so about quite big as well. Very, very big skull. Complete skeletons of Embolotherium have not yet been recovered, although many postcranial elements have been collected. The postcranial skeleton of Embolotherium suggests it was quite a powerful gravopodal animal, so, very much big and on 4 legs, very rhino-like superficially, and closely resembled the American Brontothea Megacerops, and revivaled or somewhat exceeded its in size, so making it Embolotherium one of the largest species of Brontotheas, if not the largest. So basically comparable in size to a small Asian elephant, so elephant-sized kind of size there. So I'm going to let you sleep, and we'll have a look at the female. So that's kind of the best way to describe it, potentially small elephant-sized. And unlike many other species of late Eocene Brontotheas, there's actually no clear evidence of these guys being sexually dimorphic. So potentially all males and females, or all known specimens of the species have those quite large rams on their face there. So potentially they didn't. So both males and females have them. So, therefore, coupled with the rams that were they're hollow and fragile compared to the Brontotheres in North America, like Megacerops. So the ones of the American Brontotheres are much more sturdy. These their rams are actually much more hollow and fragile. And this led to a very interesting theory. So it's believed that the American Brontotheres were using their rams to fight each other, but these guys having a lot more fragile, as I mentioned, a lot more fragile and a lot more hollow rams. This means that they probably weren't using them in the same way. So we'll go back to the male as we talk about that. So using them in different ways. And they suggest it may have had, since it's something that's found in both males and females, a non-sexual function, such as signaling. And they've also speculated that they may have served as a specialized resonator for sound production. And this hypothesis is actually supported by the fact that the bony nasal cavity actually extends to the peak of the ram, and implied there was actually this great resonating chamber in here that was covered in skin. Very similar to, and it's actually been compared to animals like, there's an extinct type of wildebeest that had something very similar to this, but also hadrosaur dinosaurs. It's actually a great example of convergent evolution between the hadrosaurs and, Brontotheres. So this is actually, you can see, even though it looks like a rhino horn, it's very different from a rhino horn, and this is actually a resonating chamber that would have been used to help produce more louder sounds as well. And also you can see it's greatly elevated. So very, very interesting. So it would have been a great big resonator. And the other species, it would have looked a lot more box-like, so you could see it come around here and then come around like a box, rather than having this kind of tall ram here. So you can see, like, what I really like the detail of this, you can see all this kind of moves as it, the lip moves and stuff. So this is definitely a very, very interesting idea, and it is supported by the evidence. So I think it's quite interesting that mammals develop something very similar to those hadrosaur dinosaurs. It's basically that equivalent. Yeah, and very, very cool. So we'll have a quick look at the baby, because, I do love the little babies, and they're very, very cute. I think they're just little adults, but we'll carry on anyway. We're going to have a look at the Zoopedia quickly, see if I missed anything. Pretty much the same. Up to 10, you kind of covered that. Powerful grab podal, yep. All known specimens of rams, we kind of all mentioned that. So yeah, that's finished. But yeah, another really cool species. I love it when we get weird species, especially Embolotherium. I love that it's got like a great example of mammals being weird, because we think we got mammals pretty figured out, and then they just have something like this where their anatomy is just like, what the hell is going on there? But yeah, really, really cool species, and a really awesome one done by Great Cakes Mods. So yeah, I think this is a great place to end the video. So I'm going to quickly thank everyone. Thank you, Jay Quadix, for all those fish, the pufferfish and the arowana and the catfish. Really great job there. Lorby, great job with the scooter, or the scoter, the common scooter. Really cool little bird. Thank you, Lorby, for the zebra. Nice to see some zebra subspecies getting some love. And thank you, Great Cakes. You always do a really great job. One of the premier modders at the moment with your Darwin's fox and your Embolotherium, Andrewsi. So very, very awesome. So yeah, I really, really, really hope you guys have enjoyed this video. If you guys like and subscribe, always look at the little bell icons to get notified about anything. So if you guys enjoyed this video, hope you guys like and subscribe, and bye-bye.